Hey guys, welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. I'm Janelle, and today we're going to talk about something that we all hope never happens while we're weaving, but it happens to the best of us, and that is breaking a warp string. So I'm going to show you how to fix it, replace it, so that you can continue on with your project. It's not ruined. Let's get started. This video is brought to you by the Spruce and Linen shop, where you can find weaving looms, kits, tools, and supplies. Link in the description box below. You might recognize this little piece from a few weeks ago when we did this knotting tutorial, and I will stick a link somewhere up here for you to check that tutorial out. Here on my loom, I have already cut a string. So I just purposefully cut a string so that I can show you how to fix it. Now keep in mind, this is a very small and basic weaving, but the concept is the same even on a larger scale. It just might take a little bit longer. So first and foremost, if this happens to you, don't panic, don't throw your piece away. We can definitely fix this. And again, like I said, this is a very simple version of this, but I wanted to show you it on a simple weaving just so that it's really clear what it is I'm doing. So right now I have this cut right here, and we are going to basically replace this string in a way that would still allow us to hang this piece from these top strings. That is definitely something you're going to want to keep in mind if you do break a warp string, is to look at your piece, figure out how you're going to be hanging it, and that will kind of dictate how you fix the warp string. So if you were going to cut your piece off the loom, tie these in knots, tuck them in, and then sew it onto a dowel later, then you only actually have to fix the one string. However, if you're wanting to hang your piece from these loops at the top of your piece, you will have to keep that in mind, that you're going to have to fix this entire piece, and both of your ends of your new piece that we're going to fix will have to be at the bottom so that you still have those clean loops at the top. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just figuring out which exact string here. Okay, so it's this one that I need to replace. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lift it up so I have a little bit of a tail. I can really see where the new warp string is going to go on this piece, because this is all done over 2 under 2 in terms of the plain weave. So the string next to it is doing the same thing. But what we're going to do first is we're going to just lift it up a little bit, just in case you are working with a more complicated piece. And what I'm going to do is just simply tie a new piece to that, so that we can not lose our place too much. So this is especially important if you're working on a really big piece and your warp string gets cut or breaks in the middle of your piece. You're gonna wanna do this method so that you don't have to spend as much time figuring out where the new warp string needs to go. So I've lifted it up a little bit, and now I'm just attempting to tie a knot. I might not have left myself a big enough tail, but let's give this a try. I'm just gonna make the tail on the new piece longer so I can hopefully tie this tight. Okay guys, I had to get my bearings here. It's been a little while since I've done this. I started on the wrong area. So because we want to have our tied piece at the bottom, that's where I've got tripped up. We're actually going to, so I'm gonna cut off what I cut, or what I attached here. We're gonna leave that in there. We're actually going to start at this bottom string. Okay, so we're gonna tie this little knot. And again, basically the only reason we're tying this is so that we don't have to figure out as big of a section that for the new warp string to go in. Okay, so now that that's tied, I'm gonna pull it down through. So this warp string here, this is from the old section, so that's this string up here. So that's still attached fine. This is our new string. So what we're going to do is we're just gonna cut this loop off so that we can tie this back here. because now what we want to do is we want to keep this old string tight, and we're going to tie on the new string. So making sure that this one, because this is part of the warp that isn't broken, and this string, we're going to tie that in a knot at the bottom here, because again we want to keep all our knots at the bottom in this case. Okay, so that's attached now. I can trim off some of the excess here. And then now what we're going to need to do, so this string is going to have to come all the way up, around, and back down. So we're going to make sure that we have enough warp string to do that. Give yourself some extra, and then cut off that piece. So now is the part that's a little bit, I'll use this needle so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. The part that's a little bit annoying if you're working on a more complicated piece, but this piece isn't too complex, so I can kind of see where I need to go. So okay, so this section actually is only over one, under one. So that means, so see how this warp string's going over the pink, and the next one is going under. So basically all I'm doing right now is trying to figure out which warp string I'm on. So I can see that now I need to go over, under, over, under. So it's kind of weaving the opposite direction. We're weaving vertically. So then now I can pull this through. So now we just need to figure out where this string is going. So I can see that I need to go, because now we're in an over two, under two section. So now I can follow this warp string. So I'm going to go under here. We're going to pull that long string we have through. Then we're going to take just the very end of this warp string and tie it to this one. This is where I had kind of messed up at first, but that's no big deal. And don't worry, like this doesn't matter at all. I just need it to be so that I can pull through. Okay, so now we're trying to find, all right, so now we found this string. Pull that all the way through. Get it as tight as you need it to be, kind of thing. And you can try to keep the tension a little bit. And now down here, we're pulling on this one. And we're pulling that all the way back through. Loop it on that little notch. And then now here at the bottom, we're doing something very similar. We're doing the exact same thing as what we did with the first end with this second end. So I want to make sure that both of these are tight. So I'm going to do this a little bit of a different way now. So I'm going under that kind of tooth there. I'm going to cut this a little bit down here so that I do have two loose ends. Okay, and then now I'm also bringing, so I've brought this string under this notch, if I can do that, under that notch. Then I'm bringing this string under the same notch, but in the opposite way. And this is just for me to be able to have something to kind of tie tight around. And then all we have to do is tie a knot. Make sure that those strings are the tightness that you want them to be. And again, I am going to triple knot since this is not an overhand knot. I like to make sure that it's a triple knot so that it's not going to slip. How many times can I say not in this one? And then you can just trim off the edges. And that is a fixed warp string. So you can see that even for me, like sometimes I have to stop and like think about how to go about this, but it's logical when you get thinking about it. Hopefully that made sense. I know it's a little bit tricky, but if you just take your time, have a little patience. I find so many issues that pop up in weaving just require a little bit of extra time and thinking through. And when it's on the loom like this, like it's hard to mess it up. Just don't go cutting a lot of things. We just added a string in. So what we did is we added it in here, we looped it all the way back down, up and around, back through to the bottom. And then we have our piece all fixed up and ready to go. The other thing is when you are working on a piece that isn't like a twill, is something more like in this section, even if the warp string didn't go back through exactly the way it should go through, it would be fine if it's hidden. Where it gets a little bit tricky is if you have a broken warp string when you're doing twill. Then you're gonna have to be very meticulous about how that warp string goes back through the weft strings to make sure that you're not disrupting your twill pattern. So just a few things to think about. Remember to think about how you plan on hanging your weaving when you're fixing a warp string. If I had decided I didn't care that I had a knot up here, all I would have had to do was fix one string. So I would have had a knot up here and a knot down here. We have 2 knots because we wanted to keep the loops at the top. So hopefully that all makes sense. As I keep saying over and over, take your time, take a deep breath, maybe walk away if you're really frustrated before you go and fix your warp string, but it is doable and I believe that you can do it. If you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you on the next one.